Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Energy City Plugged In podcast, where we talk about the latest in news, sports, culture, and business in the Estevan area. The Energy City Plugged In podcast is sponsored by Estevan Mercury Publications, Estevan's #1 source for news since 1903. My name is David Wilberg, and I'm the editor for Estevan Mercury Publications. We have a very special guest joining us here for the podcast today, a guy who I've often referred to as the most well-liked guy in the community. Very well known to local people and has been a big part of the community for many years. Fire Chief Dale Feser, it's great to have you join us today.
It's great to be here, Dave. Thank you very much. Wow, that's a pretty interesting intro there. Well, I hope I can live up to the expectations.
Well, anyone who I've ever talked to about you has certainly had nothing but great things to say about you. So it's always great when we can sit down and chat for a few minutes. So we have some different things we want to talk about today. We want to get to know you a little bit better. We want to talk about your work as a fire chief, the new fire hall, and maybe a thing or two that people might not know about you.
Perfect. That sounds great.
So firstly, can we get some information about you? Where you're from, where you went to school, things like that?
Yeah, that would be awesome. Actually, I was born in Sudbury, Ontario. So in 1974, Mom and Dad were out there. Dad worked at the nickel plant in Sudbury, and Mom was a waitress at a diner there, and that's how they met. And soon after, I came along. Shortly after that, we moved back to Saskatchewan. I was 4 at the time, and my brother, only one brother, he was 2 at the time. So we moved to Rockland, which is in the southwestern portion of the province, and that's where Dad was originally from. About a year later, we actually moved to Estevan, and Dad took a position. He's a mechanic by trade, and worked at various local garages and dealerships here in the city. So pretty much been here my whole life. As far as schooling goes, I went to St. Mary's Catholic School, as well as progressing on to the Immaculate Heart Junior High, and finished my schooling at the Comprehensive High School.
Excellent. So you were well-versed with Estevan before you came here then?
Yes, you betcha. Pretty much born and bred here. Just missed the born part, but born and raised here.
Your dad and producer Will would actually get along pretty well, because Will is got a background in mechanics as well as a very knowledgeable car guy. So
perfect. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with pulling wrenches. You always have to make sure you know how to fix stuff.
Absolutely. So after you graduated from the comp, what was the next step for you?
Well, the next step is one of those things where, I just didn't really know what I wanted to do as a vocation. So shortly after that, a friend of mine decided to give me a call, say, hey, what are we doing this summer? This is why I don't really have any plans, maybe get a job. He says, well, why don't we go play some football? I said, what the heck are you talking about? Let's go play some football. He says, well, the Regina Rams is having a rookie camp. And he says, I think we should go up there and try that out. I said, what are you talking about, Todd? We have never played any organized football whatsoever in the past.
There wasn't organized football in Estevan until 2008.
That's 2009. Correct. So what the heck? We threw caution to the wind, and we both decided that we were signing up for this. We went up to Regina, and lo and behold, unfortunately, Todd got cut from the first one, but I made the first round cut and went in and played a little bit for the Rams until I had suffered a knee injury. I got blindsided on a tackle and took a helmet right to the side of the knee. And that was my short-lived football career. However, Todd was very successful and went on to play with the Calgary team for quite a few years after that. Yeah. So after that, he came back. I took a job delivering pizzas, nonetheless, for the Tower Restaurant. The Sergel family's been a part of my life for quite some time. So they were fortunate enough to give me a job, and progressed into working for Johnson's Plumbing and Heating. I was part of the pipe fitting crew for gas lines and whatnot, and just continued on different vocations. I've been a cementer in the oil field in the past. I've been a warehouse manager for drilling mud fluids and additives. I took up a position finally at the mines, and really stayed on there for a considerable amount of time, for just about 10 years at the mines, before I decided to make my transition to full-time fire service.
I mean, I think you were working at the mines when we got to know each other, working out at the old Blitz 20-minute fitness for men.
Exactly, that's right, the Blitz.
And for those who didn't know, I think Dale was responsible for knocking a few punching bags down over the years.
The manager used to get mad at me because I'd knocked the stuffing out of a few punching bags. I'd have to go back to her and tell her I broke her toy.
I would get in there and be 1 or 2 bags would be out of service, and I was thinking, Dale might have been in here. Now, of course, people may not know that, when you were at the mines, that was when you first got in with the mine rescue team, correct?
That's correct. I started with the mines in 2001, and at that time I was living in the village of Maccoon. So I was with the fire department, of course, in Maccoon. If you live there, you're pretty much on the fire department if you're around. So that's where I really got my start in emergency services. The reason why I got involved with the mine rescue program, I found that it was actually a very well-respected program within the province there, and a lot of coworkers really enticed me to get involved with it. Why I wanted to join was no different than me joining the fire department at the time. Again, living in Maccoon, we're kind of distant to a lot of emergency services, so I wanted to take at least some medical or first aid training to help my family and the people in the town until the ambulance or the fire truck could arrive. Got bit by the bug pretty darn hard. Really put my nose to the grindstone and in the books, and studied a lot, and just continued to progress through. With the mine rescue team, it's a very, very valuable program to have around. There was a lot of focus on high-angle rescue, confined space rescue, mine gases, a lot of medical training as well, some fire suppression stuff. So I just had that thirst for knowledge, and I just wanted to keep learning more and more.
And what year did you join the mine rescue team?
That was it, pretty much right from day one. Right in 2001. So actually, I've been involved in emergency services for over 17 years now.
Excellent. I remember you. I think you were part of a provincial championship team.
That's correct.
2002, and then when did you join the fire department?
In the fire department, actually, I joined in 2004, I believe it was. Here, I'm just going to check here quick. It was 2004 that I joined the Estevan Fire Department. And of course, the biggest deciding factor was, number one, moving into the city of Estevan. So at that time, we moved from Maccoon to Estevan, purchased a home, and right away I was looking for something to do. How can I help my community? Mm-hmm. And the fire service just seemed like a natural fit with the training that I had already taken. Of course, at that time, it wasn't easy to get on with the fire department. There was a lot of long-serving members. So you pretty much had to wait until somebody retired or pulled the pin in order to get a position on the fire department.
You had no problem passing the physical?
I had no problem passing the physical, no. But it still took a lot of ribbing there, and that's what it's all about, is building those relationships, camaraderie and brotherhood and sisterhood within the emergency services.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dale. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk to Dale about some of his experiences within the fire department leading up to his promotion to the role of fire chief. And welcome back. Joining me once again is Estevan Fire Chief Dale Feser. We talked a little about his background and how he became part of the fire department in the opening segment, and now we're going to talk about some of his experience and how he progressed up to the role of fire chief. So 2004, you joined the fire department. You're a paid on call guy. What was that like being paid on call firefighter?
Absolutely amazing experience. A great group of individuals when I joined at that time. Lots of really good mentors to look up to. And it's certainly not without its challenges as well, because as you can imagine, all of our firefighters, they work a full-time job. So when the tones drop, if you're available or can make yourself available, you go down to the fire station and then you respond to the emergency. So having said that, when you're working shift work, it sure led to a lot of sleepless nights and sleepless days when you're working night shifts and day shifts. So yeah, there's a couple days where you just got done a 12-hour shift, and the next thing you know, you're on a 10-hour call for the fire department, and you got to hurry up and go home, catch a little bit of sleep, and with any luck, you have the next day off. But I wouldn't have changed a thing. It's just such a unique experience when you start really bonding with your fellow firefighters and know that everybody's there for a noble purpose and reason to help citizens in their time of need. I
mean, I came to town, and it seemed like within 3 months I knew 3 or 4 guys who were on the fire department at that point. So it's just, these are really, really dedicated members of the community, aren't they?
By all means, and it's not just in the community. It actually goes province-wide, nationwide, and even across borders. So, of course, after I've been in the fire department or with the Estevan Fire Department for quite some time, I looked, how can I further help this department along as well? So since then, I became a hazardous materials technician, took my instructor level status as well for the fire service, and then branched out and assisted with the provincial fire schools, in which I've been well over 10 years now assisting the Saskatchewan Volunteer Firefighters Association and providing adequate training for firefighters right across the province. We typically host 2 schools a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. This year, the spring school is going to be hosted in Nipawin, and in the fall, it's going to be real close. We're hosting here, so we're really looking forward to that. We're expecting over 300 firefighters and instructors to be in the city and showcase the new fire station and what Estevan has to offer and provide some top-notch training.
Obviously, it's a perfect time to be hosting that school between the new fire hall, which we'll touch on more, as well as it's the 110th anniversary for the fire department.
That's
right?
correct. We got 110 years of service. We're actually in our 111th year just now, so it's definitely been a well-established service, and we actually want to try to involve a lot of our retired members to come back and share their experiences when we host there at the banquet night. So it's going to be a great night, and I tell you what, it sure has changed over the years and how we provide service.
I know producer Will had a great interview with Lowell Holmgren at the new fire hall grand opening a couple weeks ago. So that's certainly one of the retired guys who I'm sure that has lots of experience that people can
There's
draw
no
upon.
doubt about that. He's definitely our local historian, and there's many others there as well. And it's just amazing when they tell stories and share their experiences and how they used to do things back in the day compared to how we do it now.
So I believe it was in 2009 that you became the deputy fire chief.
That's correct.
For the Estevan Fire Department. So why did you decide to move from the role of a firefighter to deputy chief?
Well, again, no different than when I joined the mine rescue program. I really got bit hard by the bug and really stuck to my guns, did a lot of studying, furthered my education and training personally in the fire service. And right around that time, I was looking for a little bit of a career change. And the position became available, and I wasn't too sure if I was even going to be successful or not. But you know what? Lord hates a coward. You're going to throw your hat in the ring and see what comes out of it. So I think a lot of that training and education that I had taken to prepare myself for the deputy chief's role is definitely a little bit different when you're stepping across and into the office environment as opposed to being a frontline suppression firefighter. But, I just loved it right from day one. When you start going into the deputy chief role, you start looking at inspections, investigations, management, making sure that you're doing a lot of pre-planning, budgetary preparations as well. So definitely a little bit different role than hopping off a fire truck and grabbing a fire hose and putting the wet stuff on the red stuff.
Yes, so one of the nice things was that you were full time now. You weren't paid on call anymore. There might have been a little bit more consistency,
correct.
A little more stability.
It's more stability. Of course, I did have to give up a substantial amount of money when I did make the transition. When I made the transition from the mines into the fire service, I gave up $30,000 a year in order to make that happen. But it wasn't about the money. It was about self-satisfaction, knowing that you're helping somebody every day in your job, no matter what. You're making a difference in the world. It's not like we were eating hot dogs and craft dinner all the time. We just had to make a few adjustments, and away we went. But I do not regret my decision to go career into the fire service at all.
Of course, then in 2015, you became the top dog. And
you bet. I had a brief stint as the acting fire chief until Chief Code arrived, and had a brief stint as the fire chief, and that actually prepared me a little bit more. However, we just take a look at things and how can we make the fire department better, more efficient, more effective, and ready for anything that's going to come our way possibly for the next possible 20, 30 years. So that's definitely something that interested me. And again, no different than when I applied for the deputy chief's position. You're applying for a job. There's no gimmies in this type of world. You're looking for the best suited candidate. And I said, what the heck, let's try to make this work.
How has the experience been as the fire chief?
Estevan. It's been phenomenal. It's just been great. The citizens of Estevan are just so super to work with. The local communities are just great to work with, as well as far as businesses. It's just a great place to learn in this particular environment. We have a little bit of everything, quite honestly, that we respond to. So it's just not like some smaller fire departments where you're just predominantly responding to grass fires and structure fires. we have a pretty good full complement service. So you look at high angle rescue response, swift water rescue, ice water rescue, hazardous materials response, motor vehicle collisions, fire suppression, both structural and wildland, aircraft emergencies, you name it, we respond to. So it definitely keeps us on our toes, and it's a great learning environment.
And obviously, the fire department is, we talk about this a few times every year, just how busy you are, but I think it works out to almost a call a day or an incident a day.
Yeah, when we take into consideration the call volumes as well as the public relation events, the training nights and whatnot, we're actually active every 1.1 days here. And that was in 2017 and 2016. We were active about one every 1.4 days. So yeah, no, we're definitely a very active, community-minded fire service.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Dale. And so we're going to take one more break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the new fire hall that we mentioned earlier, as well as, get to know Dale, our fire chief, a little bit better. Welcome back. Joining me for one final segment on this week's edition of the Energy City Plugged In podcast is Estevan Fire Chief Dale Feser. And of course, recently the fire department had a pretty monumental day, the grand opening of the new fire hall. Unfortunately, I suck at planning vacations, so I wasn't able to be there for it. I was out in BC the day of the grand opening, but producer Will was there, and he had a great time covering it, and I know that it was a great day. How has the new fire hall been so far for you?
Absolutely blew every expectation that we had right out of the water. This is definitely a very wise decision that was made on behalf of the fire department as well as the city council members and the city manager. The location is ideal. It's pristine. The size of the property, the building itself has just been nothing but stupendous. It's just absolutely amazing. It's nice that the firefighters really appreciate the additional room to actually get dressed and get on the responding apparatus that's required for that particular emergency without having to bump into each other. Everything is very thoughtfully laid out and planned out and exactly what a fire station should look like. Excellent.
And the grand opening itself?
Amazing.
What as expected?
It actually way more than what we expected. I mean, the support from the community, we had approximately over 250 people there that particular day. We had representations to the president of the Saskatchewan Association of Fire Chiefs was there, as well as the president and a few board members from the Saskatchewan Volunteer Firefighters. There's people that traveled some substantial distances just to be a part of that day. The local dignitaries, the provincial dignitaries, very, very thoughtful speeches that were put out, wow, I can't. It just boggles my mind. There's so many people there. It was almost a blur because you're trying to say thank you to everybody that showed up and just converse with them a little bit and having some of, again, our retired members there to share some of the history and experiences of the fire department leading up to this occasion.
How much of a difference has the new fire hall made for the department?
It's made a huge difference. I mean, just in response times alone, we're allowed to get to the scenes at least 2 minutes earlier than normal. It's huge, especially in a working structure fire. That makes a huge difference. At one time, of course, once we get a tone out for an emergency, both myself and Deputy Chief Rick Davies, we respond directly to the scene. Typically at that time we do a size up of the incident and then we report back to the responding apparatus so that way they can assign duties to the firefighters that are on the truck. Normally we've seen upwards of 5 minutes between the time that we get on scene to the time the truck arrives on scene. Transitioning into the new fire station location, these firefighters are almost meeting us at the scene now. So we really have to pick up our game on incident command here and get those orders to them quite a bit quicker than what we normally had in the past. So again, that just means that we're getting there that much quicker to provide the service that is needed for that emergency.
Of course, there is still some work that is left for the new fire hall, right? It's still not a finished product?
No, that's correct. I mean, and that's what we anticipated. City Council and the city manager was made aware of that we wanted to see a 3, possibly 4-year transitional phase in there, so that way it's not so cumbersome or ownership of the budget there. We don't want to deplete the budget. So what we're trying to do is just basically divided up into manageable chunks. So right now we're slipping into phase 2, so that's going to be further development of the apparatus floor, so we can develop a tool crib room, and then we have to have an SCBA fill station room. We have to provide washrooms for the firefighters, both male and female firefighters, so 2 washrooms and shower units, because occupational health and safety dictates that when it comes to decontamination of the firefighters when they're exposed to carcinogens, we need to provide that service for them. So we try to keep that environmental barrier of the apparatus floor from the office environment, so that way everything is on the apparatus floor side.
I know we've talked about before, how much of a difference it is just on the apparatus floor.
Oh, God, yeah.
You actually have room for all your fire trucks now, yes. And for your lockers. It's not so claustrophobia inducing would have been my way to describe the old apparatus floor.
Well, we actually had 5 units actually in secondary storage down at the city yard, so we tried to basically switch those around seasonally. However, periodically we will find ourselves in a position where we need that apparatus, and so then we have to dispatch firefighters down to the city yard, and then we have to open up the building. So it kind of adds about another 5 minutes to the response time, where now absolutely every fire department owned asset is actually under one roof and at our disposal at any given time.
I'm sure that makes Norm at Public Works a lot happier
too.
Oh,
God, yeah.
Have your fire trucks
well,
down there.
that quite actually helped them out quite a bit too for future expansion for Public Works. The city is an ever-growing entity and needs to continue to evolve. So Public Works was actually looking at possibly building another building, having the new fire station. Now they don't have to do that because they took over the building that we were previously using in storing that. So that allows for their expansion.
Excellent. Well, actually, getting back to the grand opening for 1 second, just how hard is it to push a fire truck into the fire hall? I don't think any amount of weight training can prepare you for something like that, especially when you're on a little bit of an incline to, of course, to promote drainage on the property. And then you add that with a little bit of ice because it's on a north face there and it doesn't see a lot of sun. So we had quite a few people on the truck there trying to push it in. We moved it approximately a foot and then it stopped and started to come back on us. So everybody tried to put on the brakes there, and of course the driver of the fire truck put her in reverse to help the truck in a little bit there. So, but I was just thoroughly impressed and surprised with how many of the dignitaries were partaking in that, as well as members of the public. Everybody was invited to partake in that, and it's a very ceremonial thing for fire departments in order to christen the fire station. It's typically used when a new truck arrives, but we've thought it probably pretty fitting as well that we can use that for a new fire station. So when you get your next fire truck, we can look forward to another
fire
truck pushing ceremony.
Typically what we do for fire trucks is we will push it in, but we like to transition where we have the old apparatus that's typically replacing, and we'll put some water in a bucket, and then we'll have guys line up and they each have a hand on the bucket. So we take water from the old truck and we put it into the new truck as well. So almost a baptism of the fire truck, if you will, for the fire department. Then we push it into the fire station. So
moving on a little bit, talk to you a little bit more about your, Dale Feser, the guy who, when he isn't the fire chief, what are some of your hobbies or some of the things that you like to do?
Well, Dale Feser, not the fire chief. That is, unfortunately, this is a 24/7 job, but I do find moments and pockets where I do allow myself to partake in a few extracurricular activities. I really do enjoy my physical fitness program. I try to take at least 2 hours to 2.5 hours a day to go to a local gym here and make sure that I'm getting my exercising in. Other than that, I just like hanging out with my family and spending time with my wife and kids and grandkids and watching TV. I'm a huge superhero fan, movie nut.
We see the Incredible Hulk stuff.
Maybe a little biased towards the Hulk, yeah.
between the build and the fact that he's green, and obviously everybody knows you're a big Ryder fan.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of spare time, but when I do have spare time, I like to just go home and relax and just have some downtime.
I remember when we used to work out at the Leisure Center gym, and there would be times in which you'd be doing your workout and you'd sadly bolt for the door. And
exactly.
That would be okay. Dale's been called to another fire call.
You just never know when the emergencies are going to occur. So you just take time to try to fit some personal time into your life when you can.
A burning question I've had. I weigh 205, 210, depending on how much beer I drank last night. And producer Will over there goes about $130. So our combined weight is close to 350 pounds. Could you bench the two of us?
Yes, I could probably blow that out of the water.
I remember you used to do the 500-pound shoulder shrug. You'd have the bar is 45, and you'd have the 5 45-pound plates on one side and 5 45-pound plates on the other. So that's 450 pounds. You have these little 2.5-pound weights at the end of each.
Yeah,
I pulled you aside one day and said, Dale, what is with the 2.5-pound weights? And of course, that gave you 500 pounds on the shoulder shrug.
Exactly. You got to go for an even number, and it's all about personal growth. Sometimes it's just baby steps, and sometimes you can throw on larger weights. But yeah, I think my working sets right now, I can do 405 pounds for 6 reps there for the bench press. But most important is my leg press. That's probably more impressive because my current working sets for leg presses are right around the 1,100 pound mark. So I do 3 sets of 10 of that. And usually a guy's pretty spent and looking for a handrail or something to grab onto after.
I remember how happy I was the first time I did 500 pounds on the leg press in university. So, well, Dale, anything else that you would like to add to the conversation that we've had today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not just the fire service here in Estevan, but right across the province as well. We talked about some of my work here with the Saskatchewan Volunteer Firefighters in the the instructing side of things here, but also I sit as a board director for the Saskatchewan Association of Fire Chiefs for our area, as well as a founding member and board director for the Saskatchewan Firefighter Citizen Response Team, or Critical Incident Stress Management Response Team, which I find is very important. And that's another reason why I like to keep my exercise regime pretty strict as well, because that's a good way to cope with a lot of the stresses that we see mentally.
Absolutely.
There's not a lot of stuff that the average person could probably take and go home and sleep at night, and it does wear thin on a guy every once in a while. But making sure that we have that strong support system in place and a number to call when a guy needs a little extra help, it sure makes a difference. And I'm telling you, yeah, exercising is the number one way to healthily deal with your stress in a healthy manner.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today, Chief Feser, Dale, and it's been a pleasure. And that wraps up this week's edition of the Energy City Plugged In podcast. Again, big thanks to Fire Chief Feser for being my guest, and to producer Will for his work in making this possible, because without him we wouldn't have a podcast. And thanks for everybody for listening. Thank you as well to the Estevan Mercury Publications and Estevan's #1 source for news since 1903 for sponsoring this week's edition of the podcast. Until next time, I'm David Wilburn.